Welcome to the show. It's Chris Graham. I am joined by Jerry Ratcliffe, the Hall of Famer, here on the Jerry Ratcliffe Show. We got a lot to talk about here in the midsummer as we're approaching July. Basketball news. We always have basketball news, it seems, Jerry, but some really big recruiting news this week, especially we're recording this on Thursday. We're about 24 hours away from some potential big news for future recruiting for UVA basketball with a potential recruit announcing tomorrow at 5:00.
Well, Christian Bliss from he goes to school in Pennsylvania, but he's from Queens, New York, and he's a 6'4", four-star point guard, and visited Virginia last week. Visited Xavier right after that. He announced that he's going to make his college commitment tomorrow at 5:00 Eastern time. I'm not sure what method he's going to use, but I know Virginia people are very hopeful. He seems like a Virginia kid. He's down to Virginia, Miami, Villanova, and Xavier, and he's spoken highly of all four schools and a lot of things that he likes. So the fact that he did visit last week and some of the things that he seems to be looking for are right up Virginia's alley. Some of Virginia's strengths, which is not only just player development on the basketball court, but in the classroom and as a person and in the weight room, are all very heavy factors, I think, that helps Virginia in his recruitment. He seems like the perfect kind of kid to be Virginia's next point guard.
Your son Scott caught up with another former New York City point guard who did a thing or two at Virginia. Jerome ties in town
just a little bit.
Just a little bit. Ties in town for his annual youth basketball camp at Albemarle High School, and Scott caught up with him and talked with him about Christian Bliss, and so Ty's apparently had a chance to talk with Bliss about Virginia.
Yeah, Scott went over there I guess yesterday, and sat down with Ty. He's going to be writing a feature on Ty soon as well. But yeah, he asked, because Bliss had told one of the National Recruiting Services earlier in the week that he was very familiar with Ty Jerome because Ty had played in the PSA Cardinals AAU team up in New York, the same team that Bliss is playing for now. So he's known about Jerome for years. Even though this guy is a high school kid, he's basketball knowledge goes way back. I think he was maybe starting at Archbishop Malloy as a 8th or 9th grader, which is Jim Larinaga's old high school in New York City, before he transferred to a private school in Pennsylvania, I think outside of Philadelphia. But so he said he had known about Jerome for a long time, and that maybe he had talked to him before. I'm not sure, but Scott talked to Jerome yesterday and asked him specifically about Bliss, and the whole story is on my website, and I think your website as well. But Jerome said that he basically sat down with him and talked to him when he was on his official visit, because Jerome was in town preparing for his camp, and he said he told Bliss, I quote, "I can't think of a better place to come in somewhere and get better. You have a great strength coach. You have a great developmental staff. You have great coaches that pour into you every day. You have nutritionists. It's a great support system." So there's a great culture that he talked about at Virginia for Bliss, and I know he called Bliss his ear and talked to him for quite a while about all the benefits of coming to Virginia. And Bliss said that he and his family have talked to Ryan Dunn and his family, since Dunn is from Long Island and Bliss grew up in Queens, as was said, and their families have spent some time together. And so I would think Dunn would also speak very highly, considering that when he committed to Virginia, they had no scholarships left, and he and his family wanted to come here so badly and play for Tony Bennett that he offered to walk on and his family paid for his first year, but a scholarship loosened up and they were able to present it to him. But I would think that both of those guys are giving you that kind of input into all the good things about developing as a player and a human being in Tony Bennett's system would greatly help Virginia's chances of landing this kid tomorrow.
You know, Ty and Ryan both were guys who looked like they might have been headed to Iona, both in their different respective recruiting. And Ty, of course, in the NBA now, heading into his 5th season. And, you know, you've been talking, Jerry, about Ryan Dunn and how the NBA loves him. ESPN had its first mock draft for the 2024 NBA draft out a few days ago. I wrote about this on Augusta Free Press. We expected to see Reese Beekman's name in that mock draft. He was listed 30th at the end of the first round. Ryan Dunn, 21st, and Ryan Dunn's a projected first-round draft pick. You've been saying for a few weeks about NBA loving Ryan Dunn. Ryan Dunn's getting the official love now from the mock drafters of the world. Yeah,
no kidding. I mean, a lot of people have compared him to DeAndre Hunter, and he's living up to it already.
King Rice was the first, if I remember, after the Monmouth game earlier in the season last year.
Yeah, well, even Tony and his staff had told him when they were recruiting him that he could be another DeAndre Hunter. And I can't wait to see this kid play this year. We only saw the tip of the iceberg last season when he slowly developed. He had a couple of big moments early, like you said, against King Rice's team, and King Rice just raved about him and made comparisons to DeAndre. And then Dunn, you know, he once they got into conference play, I think he probably didn't get quite as few minutes, and then they gave him another chance to show himself, and he really became a force down the second half of the season, I guess, and just gave us glimpses of what he potentially could do for this basketball program. And with Beekman coming back, and if he develops like he is expected to, and I've heard some really good things about Leon Bond bringing his game around, and with all the other pieces they've got, all this experience, and McNeely probably taking his game to another level too. This should be a really fun basketball team to follow this year, Chris.
Yeah, I got an unofficial report from someone who glimpsed the team in a summer workout not too long ago. The report was, one, Dunn looks like he's put about 15 pounds of muscle on since the end of the season, which that's only 3 months ago. Wow. So you think about how athletic he was last year, just a little stringy, still. But remember when DeAndre Hunter showed up, he was a big, skinny kid too, and he eventually started looking. By the time he was done, he looked like a linebacker. And then also just overall the general athleticism of this team from the report I got, just Blake Buchanan looked pretty solid from what I was told from the person glimpsing the unofficial or the summer workout. Very mobile for a big guy. Elijah Gertrude coming off that ACL injury, actually looking like he still has some work to do rehab wise, but looking really good out there. And just in general, I'm also hearing lots of good things about the team chemistry. It seems like this group feels like they're going to come into the season a little more unified. Maybe there were some chemistry issues last year, but this group, from all accounts, looks like it's a pretty tight-knit group.
Yeah, and that's a good thing, because bringing all these different pieces together from various colleges around the country through the portal, adding a couple of freshmen, and giving Dunn and Bond perhaps increased roles or responsibility. Chemistry was the big question mark, or is the big question mark, and so to hear that they're already bonding and coming together is very encouraging, I would think, for Wahoo Nation, that you and I have both agreed several times, Chris, that this team could be better than last year's team, which again won the ACC regular season and probably underachieved at the end with a couple of injury issues, but and had apparently some chemistry issues that didn't become public until after the season was over. But those issues are gone, and now this team it has tons of potential. Who knows how far these guys can go if that chemistry does come together, and it sounds like it's well on its way to doing that.
So we talked about a point guard recruiting target for 2024 in Christian Bliss. There's another point guard target in 2025's class, and he's got a local flavor.
Yeah, this one just kind of came out of the blue. I guess maybe some people were aware of it. I wasn't. But I know this kid's father. I've known him since his father was a kid. Joe Mallory is the father, and he was a former boxer, an amateur boxer, and was a pretty good one. But he's raised 3 kids. I think he has 2 daughters that have played college sports. I think one's playing college sports now. But his son, Chance Mallory, is a 5'9" point guard at St. Anne's Belfield, right here under our nose. And like you said, class of 2025, and he's already getting offers out to Kazoo. It's unbelievable. You know, I'd heard that he was pretty good. I have not seen him play. My son has. And he averaged 18 points and 5.5 assists and 3.7 rebounds for the Saints this past season. And Chris, he made Stabs varsity as a 5'1" 8th grader and ended up starting by the end of the season. And this past year, just to show you how he's developed, he had one game against Benedictine on the road, and he scored 40 points, which is a school record, and also had 7 3-pointers, also a school record in that game. And he's I think he plays for his dad's AAU team, Team Thrill. And I've been told that, you know, even though he's a small guard, he has great moves in driving, penetrating to the basket, and is a great finisher. And I mean, he's already a 4-star. And I mean, that's pretty good. He's had a ton of offers. Virginia is the latest, but he's also been offered by West Virginia, Iowa, Virginia Tech, VCU, Ryan Odom's team, Seton Hall, Maryland, Butler, Central Florida, and Liberty. And I expect that list to grow significantly as we head toward basketball season. But he plays for Damon Altizer over there at St. Anne's, and Damon has developed that program into one of the best in the state. Already put some walk-ons in at Virginia, and developed the Taylor kid, who's Justin Taylor, I believe is, and he's playing at Syracuse. Was recruited by Jim Boeheim. And so he's coming out of a solid program with Jason Wilford's son, Austin, I believe is his name, is a teammate on that team. and getting some college offers as well. And Tony Bennett's own son played for St. Anne's, and Damon Altizer. So a lot of basketball history linked up to Virginia right there.
Looking at the recruiting targets list on your website that your son Scott puts together, and it's a great resource. I would recommend that our listeners out there, viewers on YouTube, go to jerryratcliffe.com, click on the Chance Mallory story, click on the Christian Bliss story, and that nice graphic there listing the 2024 offers, the 2025. There's even one kid in the 2026 class. Man, I tell you what, they're offering them right. And the kid in the 2026 class is already 6'8". So,
Yes.
But so a great rundown of the guys that have been reached out to and offered by Tony Bennett and the staff, and a good rundown there from Scott on that. So yeah, a lot of basketball news and 2 point guards in the pipeline there that could be an important part of this Virginia program down the line. So let's see. Next up on the news, maybe Jerry, let's talk switch gears a big bit and go to golf. A couple of UVA alums making waves on the professional golf tours.
Yeah, it was fun if you're a Virginia golf fan following some of these guys last weekend. Denny McCarthy, who's been on our show, and we'll have to have him on again soon. He's had an amazing spring, early summer so far, and lost in a playoff at Jack's place at the Memorial up in Dublin, Ohio, a few weeks ago. Competed well in the U.S. Open, and then at the Travelers Championship up in Connecticut, he came within an inch of making history on an approach shot that almost went in, and that would have been for a 59. I think there's only been about a dozen guys that have made a 59 on tour, and Denny played well throughout the weekend. He couldn't hold on to the lead, but he did finish in a tie for seventh, while Ben James, the Virginia's amazing freshman, who kind of considers that his home course up there, didn't make the cut. He didn't play well, but I'm sure he learned a few things that will help him going forward. And then over on the Korn Ferry Tour, which is the level directly below the PGA Tour, he had three former Wahoos playing in that. The first day, Thomas Walsh, who was ACC two-time player of the year, and has struggled a little bit in his career. He's had some ups and downs, but he was tied for third after the first day with a 765 and was only a stroke out of the lead. He couldn't hold on to that. He finished, I think he dropped down into 60th place or something. And then Ben Coles, who I think played with McCarthy at Virginia. They were teammates. And then he ended up in around 40th, but he was in the top 10 for a while. But Ben, who I think rooms with McCarthy whenever they're on the same tour together on the road, he actually leads the Korn Ferry Tour and is trying to hold on to that lead, which I think would automatically give him a PGA Tour card for next season. He has been on the tour before and couldn't keep his card, but it'd be nice to get him back up there. And then another guy who graduated in 2018 and picked up a big fan base, Jimmy Stanger, a really, really good kid, has struggled mightily. He's had good rounds, and then he would come up the last day and think that he might have a chance to win, and he would have a disastrous hole that would knock him out of contention, or somebody else would just burn it up and shoot a 62 on the last day and beat him. Stanger won the tournament out in Norman, Oklahoma, and he had, I think that was the 8th straight cut he had made this season. So he is jettisoned up into 5th place in the Korn Ferry Tour standings. And if he can hold on to that, I think he and earns a PGA card for next season as well. And Stanger, it's a funny story. The last week, I guess, he was leading the tournament and hit his drive an inch out of bounds and ended up with a quadruple bogey 9 on the last hole. And that just cost him big time. And so he's made a habit of not watching the scoreboard the last few tournaments. And so he didn't realize he had won in Norman, Oklahoma this past Sunday. Shot a collective 22 under par and birdied the last hole. And when two of his friends on the tour came up to him after he had walked off the green and started pouring bottles of water over his head to celebrate, he thought they were just trying to cool him down because it was like 110 degrees out there. And they told him he had won, and he didn't believe them. He thought they were messing with him, but he soon learned that he won the trophy. It was a nice trophy, Chris. It was like she was holding up like a silver oil rig trophy.
Yeah, I'm seeing it right now. Yeah.
And so kudos to him for getting that monkey off his back, and hopefully he can keep going and be a bunch of Wahoos on the PGA Tour next season instead of just Denny by himself.
Yeah, we've had Bowen Sargent on the show in the recent past, and both the men's and women's golf programs have been having lots of success in recent years, and it's good to see so many of the alums making waves in the pro ranks as well.
Yeah, you got to give a lot of credit to one of my website sponsors, the Boar's Head Inn and Birdwood Golf Course, and UVA's athletic board for improving the facilities greatly out there. Birdwood underwent a big renovation, as we know, a few years ago under Davis Love III, and great golf course, and Virginia's built that really nice facility for the men and the women. It's a home for them right there at Birdwood with practice facilities and everything at their access. And I think that's helped their recruiting, helped Bowen and the women's coach bring in better recruits, and it's showing. I mean, they're both finishing well in the national tournament this year. Virginia's men just coming off its best season ever. And the cool thing is they got 4 of their 5 starters back next year, including James, who a lot of people wondered, hey, he might turn pro after this year. And he probably could, but he loves Virginia's program. He loves the coaches. As you said, Bowen Sargent and Dustin Graves, a Charlottesville guy who played at Wake Forest and has come home, and loves college golf. And so I think he just signed a NIL deal with Puma Golf, I think is related to Cobra Golf. And so I think he's got a nice little package there that may keep him at Virginia for all 4 years. And that would be a huge boost to Virginia's program because he was National Freshman of the Year, won the Phil Mickelson Award. And so what a promising future he has. And that should help them attract even a higher caliber of golfer to their program.
Yeah, those the golf programs having success this year were a big part of. I mean, I'm trying to find it here. The men were 5th at the NCAA championships.
Yep.
That was a big part of the
Learfield nearly beat Florida.
Exactly. Yeah, and the Directors' Cup standings were finalized and announced this week, and Virginia finishing 4th in the Directors' Cup, tied for second best finish overall ever. And that's and leading the ACC. There were several teams from the ACC. Virginia was 4th. What was it? I got it here. Carolina was 8th. Duke was 16th. Florida State 17th. NC State 19th. Notre Dame 20th. But 2 national championships, one in men's tennis, one in the women's swimming, of course, 3-time now, and back-to-back national championships for the women's swimming team. And but yeah, the golf was an important contributor to that. So good news across the programs for Virginia athletics, but some good news coming out of the golf as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really big deal finishing that high in those standings. That's they've done well in all those competitions, and that just speaks so highly of the entire athletic program, which is something that I think Terry Holland and then Craig Littlepage and John Oliver really emphasized. I know Littlepage told me that he and Oliver sat down, I think his first year on the job when he succeeded Terry, and they wanted to become the Stanford of the East in terms of the entire athletic program. And wow, you know, they may have accomplished it. I mean, they're so good in just about every sport. If they can somehow find a way to get football back up to par, that would mean a lot to the entire athletic program, because as we know, that is the engine that drives the financial train.
Yeah.
But also it allows all these other programs to flourish and upgrade facilities and fund the athletes and all that stuff. So kudos to Carla Williams for following up on that and keeping this program as high on the board as it has been.
We'll talk some football and baseball news as we start to, when we get ready to wrap up the show. But I wanted to bring a couple other news bits in from both of our websites. One, softball. Joanna Harden was signed to a 3-year contract extension through 2026. Virginia has struggled in softball. That's one of the sports that is still working on its way back up, but 2 winning seasons, I guess, the last 2 years for Harden and the UVA softball team. So she's got 3 more years to work on that. She's been in Charlottesville for 7 years, and so she's extended. And then I thought there was some interesting news, Jerry, I didn't know this until I was rooting around your website. A couple of additions for the UVA men's lacrosse team off the transfer portal. One, Matthew D'Souza from Binghamton, a face-off standout. But then also, this is the one that intrigues me. I've heard of Tufts lacrosse at Division III level, very, very solid D3 program. And one of their attackmen, Jack Boyden, who scored 290 points the last 2 years, is heading to Virginia. He'll play his 5th year at Virginia. And it'll be interesting to see how he can make the transition from D3 to D1.
Yeah, I have a feeling he'll make that pretty well. I mean, his numbers were incredible, as you mentioned. He scored 290 points in the last 2 years.
He had 69 goals and 88 assists just last season.
Yeah, he was Division III National Player of the Year, and led the Jumbos, cool nickname, Tufts Jumbos, to the Division III National Championship game. And as we reported some not long ago, Sean Kerwin, who was the offensive coordinator for Virginia, was hired as the head coach at Dartmouth. And so Boyden will be coming in playing for a new offensive coordinator, and I think associate head coach Kevin, I'm not sure how you pronounce his last name. That's Cassese.
Cassese? Maybe we'll go with that for now, right?
Yeah. Who had been head coach at Lehigh for the past 16 years and will be the offensive coordinator for Lars Tiffany. So I have a feeling they really liked this kid and probably went after him when they decided to open up his recruiting again. Could be a strong addition. I think they've had a couple of additions. I know they also added former Binghamton's face-off standout, D'Souza, as you said, Matthew D'Souza. So probably 2 strong additions to what should be another really good Lars Tiffany lacrosse team next season.
Indeed. Just reloading as is usually the case for the UVA lacrosse program.
Yeah.
Football recruiting news. Jerry, you had a lot of news this week on the recruiting trail. Break some of that down for us.
Yeah, Tony Elliott and his staff heated up. I think this is some of the better recruits that they've gotten commitments from. Um, I think some of these kids were fairly fairly highly recruited. Uh, One of them, Tristan Ward, is a 6'1" wide receiver out of Deerfield, Massachusetts. And he visited in early June, and it didn't take him long to commit. And he was a wide receiver that some of Pitt's staff went and visited him, and they were actually looking for some other players, but they noticed this kid and went after him and tried to get him to visit. But I think Deerfield's academic calendar didn't fit with a visit to Pitt. I don't think he ever made it out to Pittsburgh, but he was able to visit Virginia in June 9th. I think he might have squeezed in a visit to Pitt later. I'm not sure, but anyway, offensive coordinator Frank Signetti up there at Pitt really wanted this kid, and he chose Virginia over Pitt, Boston College, Duke, and Colorado State. So he's a pretty fast kid. He's got a 4.69 in the 40. He's a versatile athlete. He's played wide receiver, cornerback, running back, and quarterback. So I think he's a good athlete. Another kid they went back to Georgia. They've got 4 commitments this year from Georgia, Chris, and we all know that that's been a pretty fertile recruiting around the last several years. And if you're a top, I don't know, top 100 and something recruit out of Georgia, you're probably pretty decent. This kid, Keyshawn Adams, 6 foot 190 safety out of actually this kid's from Connecticut. Excuse me on that. I've got him confused with another kid. Anyway, this kid is from Old Farms, Connecticut. He's a 6 foot 190 3-star safety out of that program up there. He's ranked the number 10 recruit in the state of Connecticut. And Virginia beat out Syracuse, West Virginia, Duke, and UConn for this kid. He had some other offers too, I think from Syracuse. So I think he's the 4th defensive back Virginia has gotten a commitment from so far. I think he's pretty strong candidate there. And then the kid I was talking about before from Georgia, from Fairburn, which is right outside of Atlanta, is Kevin Gray, 6'1", 170 cornerback from Creekside High School. He's a top 100 player in Georgia, which speaks highly. He's a 3-star. He visited a week before the other kid on June the 2nd. And again, he's the 4th defensive player, 4th player overall from Georgia that Virginia has gotten a commitment from. All 4 of them are on the defensive side of the ball. So they got a safety and a corner and a wide receiver all there in one within 2 days. And Gray, the kid, the corner, had a very impressive list of offers from Missouri, Pitt, Kentucky, Louisville, Kansas, Memphis, Georgia Tech, Florida State, Colorado, Appalachian State, Boston College, Kentucky, Kansas, JMU, Indiana, Central Florida, South Florida, UAB. So that's one of the more impressive lists of schools of any of the guys Virginia's gotten commitments from so far this spring. So I think that gives Virginia around 10 or 11, maybe 12 commitments. I'm not sure. I'll have to go back and check, but made a little noise. They had a couple of weekends where they brought in a lot of kids, and then they had some in for their camps and it's paid some dividends for them already. So as Tony Elliott tries to move this program along, he's getting just about everybody he's gotten so far in this class is a 3-star, which some people say, well, they're not 4 or 5 stars. Well, some of the best players that Virginia's ever signed are in college football, started out as 3 stars or 2 stars and just developed. So you can't get too low on that. So some good upbeat news for the football program.
And, a lot of work in Georgia, you noted. And
Yeah.
I'm just wondering how much of that is one of our buddies, Chris Slade, who's, of course, had that long tenure as a high school coach down in the Atlanta area. Chris, I would assume, has been having some success back in his old stomping grounds.
Yeah, I think so. And Coach Cox, the defensive backs coach, I think maybe was involved in all these guys too. But I know the one defensive end, the pass rusher they got a commitment from Georgia, said he was directly influenced by Chris Slade, who he was aware of Chris's pro career with the New England Patriots, and then what he had done at Virginia back in the 90s when he set the ACC quarterback sacks record, which Chris amazingly still stands. Chris Slade still is the all-time leading sacker in ACC football history. So I don't know when the NCAA started keeping that stat. It wasn't until probably somewhere in the 80s, but still quite a crown to have on your head after all these years for Chris Slade.
And now some baseball news that also has impact on football. Some good news for a couple of Virginia baseball players, Griff and Jay Woolfolk, being named to the roster for the Team USA Collegiate Summer Team, national team, which will play a pair of 5-game series against Chinese Taipei and Japan. In fact, they should be starting tomorrow, I think, if my math on that's right. I think they go from June 30th to like July 13th or something like that. Woolfolk, the news there that impacts football is Jay Woolfolk was the backup quarterback the last 2 years, and of course he spent some time in the spring in spring practice trying to balance his baseball and football schedules. And he got some live reps and got a lot of mental reps in spring practice. The battle with Tony Muskett for the QB1 job now that Brennan Armstrong has moved on. But this would obviously keep him off. I know that the football team is largely back on grounds, summer school in session, and a number of the guys are back for summer workouts. Jay is plying his trade as far as being a baseball player concerned. He's a projected top 5-round draft pick next season. He'll, after his junior season, be eligible for the Major League Baseball draft, and he's looking like a guy who will go in a 2nd or 3rd round. He looked really good. He had a couple of scoreless outings in the Team USA's inter-squad scrimmages, and obviously made the team. So good for him there, and good for Griff as well. But as far as UVA football is concerned, that'll keep him away a little longer heading into the start of training camp later next month.
Yeah, that'll certainly delay him working out with receivers and running backs in the summer when I know these guys get together. And I don't know, I'm not sure when their summer conditioning program begins, but I know a lot of these guys get better and develop a strong bond with the receivers over the summer in individual or small group workouts. So I guess some 7-on-7 stuff or whatever. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that impacts him moving forward. It's a lot to make up for only in training camp, but I'm not saying that he can't do that. I mean, he could come in and have an overwhelmingly good training camp because he's that good an athlete. But I guess it makes you wonder if he has a decision to make at some point, whether he just wants to play baseball or continue on and try to play both sports. It's very hard to do and very time demanding and very stressful on the body, I would think. But, I think you mentioned this last week, perhaps, that after the College World Series was over and Woolfolk didn't get a lot of action late in the postseason, that O'Connor, said that Jay Woolfolk really wasn't himself because, having to split time between both sports during the entire spring. So probably takes a little bit away from both sports and prohibits him from being all he can be in both or either. So I don't know. Who knows? He might be the kind of kid that can pull it off. And he may at some point just say, hey, one of these sports is best for me and I'm going to devote all my time to it. But only time will tell. It's hard to say.
I was chatting a few weeks ago with someone from the athletics department about the quarterback situation at Virginia. And it was emphasized to me that Tony Elliott, of course, during spring practice, said repeatedly that he was going to wait to make a decision on the starting quarterback until training camp. It was impressed upon me in that phone call a couple of weeks ago that it's likely going to be probably early in training camp, maybe in the first week or week and a half of training camp. Then, I'm kind of reading tea leaves here, but the conversation then diverted to, well, if Jay doesn't get the job, Coach Elliott's already thinking about ways he can still get him on the field. Because one thing Jay will tell you is that he's the fastest guy on the football team. He'll tell you that. And we saw glimpses of that the last 2 years when he would get some wildcat plays, or I think there was one drive last year at the end of the Illinois game where he took over for Brennan Armstrong when Armstrong got injured and moved the offense with his feet a good bit in that game. Very fast young man, and he, of course, got the great arm as a pitcher and quarterback. But if he doesn't get the QB1 job, expect to see if he's part of the program. I think there might be a question there. But assume that he'll get some more wildcat run, maybe even some packages kind of like were designed for Keaton Thompson, who excelled for 3 years. He came to Virginia as a quarterback from Mississippi State and eventually played wide receiver for Virginia and played it very well, led the team in receptions the last couple of years. So if he's part of the program, they're going to figure a way to get him on the field because he's too good of an athlete not to be on the field.
Yeah, well, one of the things I liked about Bronco when he was here was that even if a guy maybe wasn't starting at a particular position, if he was an athlete who could contribute to the offense, like Keaton Thompson, he found ways to use them to Virginia's advantage. And he said, you're not doing me any good standing on the sideline holding a clipboard and writing down plays or whatever. But I thought that was one of the downfalls of Virginia's offense last year is that they didn't give Keaton Thompson the ball nearly enough. I think he could have helped him a lot more than he did. But I would hope that if that's the case and Woolfolk is not the starter, then they can find ways to use him more than just maybe an occasional package. But we'll see. Time will tell. But we did hear Tony Elliott say, not this spring, but the previous spring, that when Jay Woolfolk ran the ball in their scrimmage, that he was, quote, electric. And we've seen a little bit of that, as you said, from time to time during his brief career, that he can really run with football. And I've always been someone who enjoys and thinks it's a great benefit to have a running quarterback who can, I've seen so many of those guys make a difference. I mean, my goodness, look at what Bryce Perkins did at Virginia with his ability to run the football. And then we saw that some with Brennan Armstrong when things broke down. Because defenses really aren't set up to stop a running quarterback. So I think that's particularly in college football, it's a strength. So we'll see. It's going to be, I think, one of the big things that Virginia fans will have their eyes on, and I know you and I will once training camp starts in August, is that quarterback race and how well Woolfolk can adapt on the run, so to speak. No pun intended.
I'm looking at the roster right now, and I'm thinking about how that previous regime. You mentioned Bronco Mendenhall, but Robert Anaya, the offensive coordinator, who's now at NC State with Brennan Armstrong, how that group recruited athletes at quarterback. And we still have three guys, including Jay Woolfolk, who was recruited by the Anaya offensive group, who are speedsters. So you got Woolfolk, you got Delaney Crawford, the young man, sophomore from California, and then Davis Lane from Lynchburg. Lane was a 55 meters specialist in track. He had the 15th fastest time in his senior year of high school a couple years ago in the country in the 55 meters. And then Crawford was a top 10 guy in the 100 meters out in California, very competitive high school track scene out there. So, makes me think of Jacob Rodriguez, who got some playing time. He was a quarterback, recruited as a quarterback of Virginia, ended up playing some running back and wide receiver his 1 year before he transferred out. And we talked about Keaton Thompson. So they recruited some very athletic quarterback types who ended up getting on the field other ways. I'd love to see if Crawford and Lane can't get in that quarterback mix. They're athletes. They're fast. You can't teach speed. Either you have it or you don't. So figure some other ways to get those guys on the field as well.
Yeah, Crawford was claiming that he was the fastest guy on the team for a while there. I think he and someone else on the team, it wasn't Jay, had an unofficial race against each other to decide the argument. I can't remember who the other kid was, but I think, trying to test my memory here, and I don't think the details were very revealing, but I think the other kid may have beaten Crawford by an itsy bitsy bit. Not sure, but anyway, he is a fast kid, and it would be nice to see him at least find, if they could find a way to get him the ball in his hands and see if he can use that speed, particularly on the corners. Virginia needs to put some pressure on the edges, I think, and open up their offense a little bit. Certainly they got to do better than last year when they averaged 17 points a game. That ain't going to beat anybody these days.
No, not the way college football scores these days. No way.
Not in Xbox football days, where you got to score 30 or 40 to win.
That's what that Anaya group did.
That's
so
not enough.
the Anaya group did so well. They just figured out ways to use guys. And there's guys there. So we'll see if they can figure them out. Punt returns, kick returns, on the edge, slot receiver. There's lots of ways. Defensive, even on defense, put him at cornerback. Who was the guy? Vic Hall, the record-setting quarterback at Gretna from back in the 2000s, recruited by the Al Grove group. A little small, maybe to play quarterback. He was like 5'8" or 5'9". So they played him at cornerback for 4 years. If you can put speed on the field, put speed on the field.
Yeah, like you said, you can't coach speed, and the more of it you have, the better, I think. And that's something I think that has generally been lacking from Virginia's program, and something I know they're trying to improve, but they could sure use some of that.
They sure could. Well, we're not too far off from football practice. I know we both got our invitations to the ACC football kickoff next month in Charlotte, so that's like 3 weeks away, I think. After that, practice starts around the ACC and certainly in Charlottesville, so we're not that far away from football getting teed up here.
I think we're like 65 days or something from the opening game. That's not too far away.
That is not. No, baseball did a good job for us this year. Baseball kept us occupied until late in the summer, or late in the I guess late spring, early summer season. So we didn't have as much time in between actual sports as we sometimes have. Thanks to Brian O'Connor and that group for that. So Jerry, I guess we're getting ready to wrap up here. Anything we haven't talked about? Anything else that's got your attention?
I think probably the only other thing that deserves a mention is, and I think you've got a story about him on your website today, is former Wahoo Andrew Abbott who's having a tear it up start to his major league career with the Cincinnati Reds. And I think he's a former USA baseball alum that played for Virginia and played on that USA team. And he's 4-0 now, Chris, I believe.
4-0 in 5 starts, the 1.21 ERA. Scott German had a nice piece on his game. He beat the Orioles the other night, which was tough for Scott. Scott's the biggest O's fan you'll ever meet in the world. But then there he is he's watching Andrew Abbott, one of our guys. So, but no, he in that game, I think Abbott gave up 1 run on 2 hits in 6 innings. He struck out 8, walked 3. And his ERA actually went up with those numbers. That's how good he's been pitching this year. Yeah. So, and the Reds run, they were in 4th place, a half game out of last place in the NL Central when he got called up. They've won all 5 of his starts. He's got 4 wins in those 5 starts, 1 no decision, a victory for the team eventually over Colorado. But since he's been called up, they've gone from 4th place, almost in last place, to now being in 1st place in the NL Central. So he's an important part of a young, very rapidly improving team.
Yeah, it's amazing what some of these additions to the Reds have done for that team. I mean, they shot up from worst to first, and they're a force now to be reckoned with. So much talent, and I'm happy for Andrew Abbott. He's such a good kid. He was so much fun to work with when he was at Virginia. It's always
another former guest of the show not too long ago.
Yeah, Halifax County boy. He was just a delight to work with from the media standpoint. And
I have to say, you mentioned Halifax County. The first time I heard his name was from our friend, the late great Tucker McLaughlin, who was raving about him when he was in high school. And he said, "There's this kid. I tell you what, he's going to be in Charlottesville. He's going to be a guy." And Tucker had a lot to say about a lot of things, but he was definitely right about that one.
Yeah, Tucker was spot on about Andrew, and I miss that big guy to this day. I can't believe he's gone, but he definitely had Andrew Abbott tabbed as a future star. And Halifax County has produced some major league talent in the past, and so it's great to see that Mr. Abbott is exceeding all expectations, perhaps even his own. And it's going to be fun to follow him the rest of this season and see if he can remain on the tear that he's on. But wow, we'll have to get him back on the show sometime now that he's hit the big time.
Not sure if you've seen his mustache. My wife's not a big fan of the mustache. Other than that, she's a fan, but he's got this little. It's not fully grown in. He's still a young guy, so he's trying to grow a mustache and it's not working very well.
Isn't that a requirement to being in the major leagues now, is having some kind of facial hair, or at least hair down to your middle of your back or something?
You have to have something unusual. Yeah, either weird facial hair, the long hair, curly hair. You have to have something, sideburns. I mean, yes. Either you look like you came out of a 70s movie, or Starsky and Hutch, or something. Yeah.
Or the 1800s.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. But no, it's great to see Andrew doing so well. And so, Scott German had the piece from Augusta Free Press. Check that one out. It's still on the front page of the sports section there on AFP. There's a lot of good stuff on jerryratcliffe.com as well. Well, Jerry, I think it's probably time for us to thank the sponsors who helped make all this possible. Yeah,
and before we go there, I'd like to thank all of our readers over the past and our listeners to the podcast, which continues to grow. We get great comments on that every week, Chris. This week is our 5th year anniversary at jerryratcliffe.com. It's hard to believe, and wouldn't be here without Chris Graham and his wonderful wife, Crystal, that helped us get our feet off the ground. And thank you, Chris, and Crystal and Scott German that helped us, and your support staff over there that's done wonders to help us grow. So appreciative of that, because 5 years ago this week, I didn't know where the hell I was going. I wasn't sure after more than 40 years in the newspaper business, and all of a sudden that was gone, and I had a lot of paths I could have chosen. This is the one I chose, and thank you all for keeping us alive for 5 years, and hopefully we can keep going and keep growing. And we want to thank all of our sponsors on the website and our podcast, and we hope to welcome more of you guys. We could use some more sponsorship and advertisers to keep us free. So anyone that's a Wahoo fan or whatever can call up our website and enjoy the content. And the advertisers here on the podcast exclusively are the Good Feet store. Jonathan Cotton has been a great supporter. What a good man he is. He's not only a Crozet native and a Wahoo, but he's just a good man in general. He supports all the right things, and I'm excited to see his company grow, the Good Feet store. They're based in Richmond, but they have a great store right here in Charlottesville at Stonefield. I'm a customer, and I'm a happy customer. They design special arches to help your feet, to help you walk more comfortably or run more comfortably. And this week, Chris, I think they opened up a brand new store in Bristol. I think we mentioned last week that Joey Logano,
Joey Logano.
I'll get that right eventually. The NASCAR driver was there for their grand opening. Apparently they had tons of people show up. And I think they're opening a new store in Wilmington, North Carolina, this week, I believe. And they're all over the Mid-Atlantic. I mean, they're the rage of the foot comfort world. So if you haven't been by their store in Stonefield, you really need to get over there, and they can help you. I can testify to that. So thanks to Jonathan Cotton and the Good Feet store at Stonefield. Thanks to the Aberdeen Barn. After you've eaten a great dinner there, you can go walk off some of those calories you put on with your Good Feet arches. But go see Angela and Terry. A great atmosphere, great food, great service there at the Aberdeen Barn. Convenient location right off of 29 down there at near the 250 exchange. So that's one of my favorite places in the world to eat. And also the good people from Roback, Charlottesville company that's all over the country now. I played in the Virginia Sports Hall of Fame golf tournament over at Stony Creek at Wintergreen last week, or maybe 2 weeks ago. And Roback was everywhere. I saw all kinds of golfers wearing Roback shirts and hats. They're not only comfortable for golf or whatever outdoor activity you're participating in, but it's just great sportswear. You can wear it anywhere. And they have a women's line, and you need to go check that out on our website. I know many of you have. We've gotten some good feedback from Roback about people ordering from their site, off of our site. So continue that on. You'll help Roback, and you'll help us, and help us both grow. So it's nothing like seeing a Charlottesville company catch on fire and grow around the country. So please support all those people, and go to our website and support all those fine sponsors as well. We couldn't be out here doing all this if it wasn't for the sponsors. So thank them all.
Boy, you're like a NASCAR driver, thanking all the sponsors like that. Off
the
top of your head,
with all their sponsors on it, like with NASCAR, right?
We need to work on that. Yeah, and 5 years. That's time really flies. I remember when we first sat down with Scott German. We were having wings, I think, one day, just kind of throwing spitballs out there.
BW3 in Waynesboro.
That's right. Just what can be next for Jerry? And here we are 5 years later, and you're still now you're Hall of Fame Hall of Famer Jerry Ratcliffe. So that's awesome to be a part. I'm humbly, and my wife and I are so happy to be able to just be a small part of what you guys are doing. You and your son Scott are doing over there. It's a lot of fun.
Well, we hope to keep growing. So Thanks for everybody's support. We appreciate it.
Thanks to all the listeners, all the viewers on YouTube. Again, go to jerryratcliffe.com, go to augustafreepress.com for the latest UVA sports news and more. For Jerry Ratcliffe, I'm Chris Cram signing off. Have a great week, everybody.